Let's turn our attention. Philippa Good's still here, as you can hear. Your thoughts on all the topics we're talking about. 0344 499 1000. Very welcome. But let's get to my next guest now and talk about trans issues, because we've had that Supreme Court ruling back in April. We thought we made it really, really clear what the law was and what the law had always been in terms of single-sex spaces, whether it's prisons or toilets or changing rooms or all whatever. But now it seems to be remarkably confused. Let's try and make sense with Amy Gallagher. She's a former NHS nurse at the Tavistock, that clinic that was basically leading kids down a horrible, horrible route. And she's a commentator now at the New Culture Forum. A very, very good morning to you, Amy.
Hi, Julia.
Where do we even start with this? I saw a note on this yesterday, and I was like, I don't even understand this story. This is the Equalities Minister, also the Education Secretary, Bridget Phillipson. And basically, she revealed yesterday that the Equality Watchdog, this is the Equality and Human Rights Commission's, their as yet unpublished code of practice that they sent to her, I think, last September, is only intended for organisations providing services to customers, and it won't apply in the workplace. I'm very confused because we had a Supreme Court ruling in April that affects everyone at all times, in all places, in our country, but apparently not according to the Equalities Minister. What's going on?
Well, and just to add to that, the Supreme Court ruling didn't change anything. It only clarified what was written in the Equality Act. So even before the Supreme Court ruling, women should have been given their single-sex spaces. Yeah. So the idea that post the Supreme Court ruling that still isn't happening is amazing to me. This whole idea of guidance, I always saw it as being used as an excuse not to enforce the law.
Yes.
The law is more important than guidance. You can always have all the guidance you want and it can be all very helpful or unhelpful or whatever, but you have to follow the law. And
shouldn't the guidance just be making the law a bit more simple? Although actually I thought the Supreme Court ruling was 8 pages, was remarkably straightforward. Well, you didn't have to be a lawyer to understand it.
Well,
men are men, women are women. Sex is defined in the Equality Act is your biology, what you were born, not a piece of paper you've got or what you think you are on a Wednesday afternoon.
Yeah, this is the thing. How much guidance do you need around the fact that there are men and women, and if you say a space is for a woman, it is for a woman? You know, you can write that guidance on a post-it note, quite frankly. Yeah. It's not necessary. And what's happened is a lot of employers like the NHS have been using the fact that we're waiting for this guidance to be published as an excuse not to enforce the law. But obviously, as we've seen from Bridget Phillipson, she's saying, well, it isn't going to clarify workplace guidance anyway. So even when this is published, the NHS can still say, well, we're not sure what we're doing. It's an absolute mess. We are 10 months on, nearly a year on from the Supreme Court ruling. We've had several cases, the Darlington nurses, Sandy Peggy, high-profile legal cases, and this is still going to be an issue for women working in the NHS or other workplaces.
And crucially, again, with those cases, those nurses, we are talking about nurses who are required to come to work, not in their uniform, to change into the uniform, get down to bra and knickers and put their uniform on, and they're being basically forced to do that in front of any man who says he's called Jane and wants to stand and watch them, and that's what's been going on. And these women are absolute heroes of mine for standing up to this and saying, no, we won't put up with this. So what we're basically saying is that in an NHS hospital, for instance, if I, as a patient or as a visitor to a hospital, want to use a single-sex toilet, I've got the right to that. But the nurse or the doctor or the radiographer working, or the person working in the canteen or the cleaner, they don't have a right to that. I'm sorry, that's a nonsense. She's clearly wrong, and this is clearly going to face another legal challenge, and we're going to go through all this again.
It is a nonsense because nurses are protected by the Equality Act, which we now know when the word woman is used or sex is used, it means sex. Yeah. And they're also protected by the health and safety at work regulations, which clearly state that single-sex spaces like toilets should be provided in workplaces. Yeah. So the idea that you would ignore all of those laws because you're waiting for guidance is the complete wrong way round. It's the law that comes first, and the law is very clear. Yeah. What it is that there are lots of NHS organisations up and down the country that just do not want to enforce this for fear of backlash within their hospitals, because transgender ideology has been pushed so hard in the NHS for the last 5-10 years that they are scared of the trans activists and that people will be upset by it.
Well, you say they're scared of trans activists. The trans activists are the people in charge. That most of the people involved at high levels in these organisations didn't get there unless they paid lip service to it. They either believe it or they'll kowtow to it. HR totally captured, absolutely, and I mean all their rainbow lanyards and the like. We know this. I mean, this is part of the problem, that you can change the law, you can clarify all these things, you can have reports into the Tavistock Clinic and have it really clear about puberty blockers and the like. But at the end of the day, you've got schools, the NHS, universities, the government, the civil service are utterly captured by this Stonewall-led trans activist agenda, which is basically taking away women's rights and dignity in favour of men who claim they're women. That's what's happening.
And what's even more amazing is that the Labour government are allowing this. The Labour government brought in the Equality Act. You will hear them talk nothing else about equality. Yet they are not they're not making sure that the NHS enforce the Equality Act. And they will also talk at length about misogyny and women's rights.
Yes.
But they will not protect NHS women, working class women. They will not allow them to be protected in the NHS. So they don't care about equality, actually, and they don't care about women. So it's complete hypocrisy.
Yeah, it's quite fascinating. Actually, the Labour backbench, because actually a lot of the fight back against trans ideology came from women on the left who took a hell of a lot of a criticism and lost a lot of their friends and colleagues and allies for speaking out. They're the ones who took the brunt of it and have come over to the dark side of people who believe in freedom of speech and biological reality. Sorry, you're now on the same side as me. But it is fascinating to watch these women on the left at the Labour Party sort of battling over this issue, like the grooming gangs inquiry, over the Mandelson being appointed as the US ambassador despite his friendship with Epstein, which was known at the time. He was a paedophile, serial women's abuser, and a boys' club that apparently didn't really think that was much of an issue because he was good at his job. I mean, they are really finding themselves between a rock and a hard place, and frankly, they're going to have to choose a side.
Yeah, exactly. And they can't be seen to be, talking about they need to bring in laws around or guidance around misogyny in schools, and they need to tackle toxic masculinity. I mean, all of that just rings absolutely hollow when, as you say, massive issues like Epstein, like the grooming gangs, and protecting working class women in their jobs at work, they go silent on. So
exactly, because those middle class women, funnily enough, they don't have to wear uniforms, do they? They don't, apart from their rainbow lanyard, of course, and their Palestinian badge. Let me ask you about events overseas, though. This absolutely horrific school shooting in Canada in a tiny little small town in Tumbler Ridge Secondary School. Yesterday evening, the Canadian police finally named the killer. It was identified by local people some 12 hours earlier as Jesse Van Rootselaar, an 18-year-old. They described the killer, as had been described all day yesterday, as a female. Then, under questioning, they finally admitted this was a person who had been born a biological male and had transitioned to female at some point over the last 6 years, from the age of 12 to the age of 18. Continued to use the pronouns she and her. BBC, Sky, and everyone, you could just feel the stress of the meetings they were having. What do we do? What do we do? We've said this was a female the whole day, and then agreed to basically say it was biological male who transitioned to female. They've not used the phrase trans woman once, which I think is interesting, because if it'd been a victim who'd been trans, they would absolutely use that phrase. They've tied themselves up in knots, knickers in a twist. In no way is the pronouns of the killer remotely as important, even a scintilla of importance, as the horrific mass murder they've carried out. But it does matter whether the police and the media, both in Canada and in Britain, acknowledge the reality of who committed this crime, isn't it? And tell us why.
It really does matter. I mean, I think the media coverage of this has been absolutely outrageous. Most of the headlines just say transgender. Now, that can mean anything.
Yep.
You don't know whether it's a man or a woman, whether it's someone that's gone through a transition, or they just say that they're trans. So it's a completely pointless word. And then when you read the articles, it says transgender female. So you sort of think, are they a female or are they trans? What are they?
Yep.
It's incredibly important that the headline should say a man has shot a certain number of people, because it is a man. And this is very important, because if you look at all the school shootings in America, historically, they are often, almost always, committed by men. This is a case.
And in Canada and America, Canada and Britain, there's never been a mass shooting of any kind by a woman.
No, exactly. So it fits within a pattern. And if we are to take violence towards women and girls, or violence just generally, seriously, we need to look at that pattern. So it's unbelievably infuriating that in 2026 we are still battling for, basic words to be used in relation to a mass murder.
Well, if the police can't give us basic facts like that, what else are they not giving us? Amy Gallagher, always good to talk to you. Voice of Reason at the New Culture Forum. Thank you very much indeed. 11:48 is the time.